a chronicle of the life of a film director who was reviled for her mysterious invitation.
Somebody write this.
Hi, and welcome to Somebody Write This, where we use a random plot generator to give us an idea, and then we brainstorm how that could be a thing somebody might want to write. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Jenny, and to help us with our brainstorming today, we have a guest. Welcome, Denise.
Hello. Howdy.
Hello.
Hi, we're so glad you could join us. Our listeners don't know this, but we actually recorded a full other episode with Denise
Yes.
several weeks ago.
We're calling that the Ghost Podcast.
It
Okay,
is.
okay.
It's the forever. We have 2/3 of it still, but we don't have any of my audio. So maybe someday we'll release just 2/3 of the podcast, and you could all figure out what was being said in the long silences when I was speaking.
You know what? That's kind of a thing of itself where guests can just, or the audience
Yeah.
can just fill in the blanks themselves.
Oh my
Right.
gosh, that'd be so much fun. We invite people to fill in their own their own answers. So we're so glad that you could come back on the podcast and join us, because we had such a great time talking with you before, and you said when you left, you're like, I don't know if you do repeats, but I'd love to come back, and we didn't think it would be right away. but we're happy to have you back.
That was the universe responding to my request.
Yes.
It was. It was like, we don't get to record any of what you did before, but yeah, you get to do this again.
Yeah, we're so happy to hang out with you again.
I would love to talk with you a little bit. When we first connected, we connected over on the National Novel Writing Month forums, where you and I had both been participating in NaNoWriMo and writing our own novels in a month. And when we first got you connected onto the podcast, you were our first author to have anything published. You're now our second one. However, our first author that we had on the podcast, Jo Cassidy, went the traditional route and queried for all her books and found a publisher. You, Denise, have gone for the most part, I know you said in the last one that you've done some querying, but you've gone primarily the self-publishing route. So
Right, yeah.
Tell me first, what made you to decide, I'm just going to publish these myself?
So I haven't given up on like doing the traditional publishing route, but
Yeah.
there was a part of me that was like, I've always had this kind of, I'll say, entrepreneurial spirit from like a young age. And I had a friend that was like, you should self-publish. And I was like, hard no for the longest time. But then I had some other friends who were writers as well that were, going the self-publishing route. And I was like, I probably could do this. And I'm still learning a lot. Even though I have a couple titles out there, I am definitely still going back to the entrepreneurial spirit of just, try it. So I would say that's kind of like the fun thing about being a self-published author. It's like you do something, you test it out, you experiment, you either, rinse and repeat, or you make some tweaks here and there. So, but that said, I figure whatever I do now will still be helpful to me as far as my journey in regards to getting traditionally published, because I definitely haven't given up on that. And in fact, I think one of my New Year's resolutions is to send out so many queries this year.
Yeah.
But then I'm also, planning to self-publish another novel soon, because I think in the, grand scheme of things, that still looks good from, if and when I ever find an agent and, get traditionally published, it looks good that, I feel like me doing my own lead work and wearing all these multiple hats as far as, being a writer and any editing I do it, or any editing I, as far as getting servicing that out and marketing, I figured all that little bit under my belt will help, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good experience.
Of the many hats you have to wear now as a self-published author, which one would you be most happy to take off when going the traditional publishing route? Which one would you be most excited to be like, I don't have to do
I'm
more?
not gonna lie, marketing is been quite the challenge. It's been such a challenge that it's been like, some authors sometimes have like imposter syndrome and like have moments of like, my writing sucks, I'll never be like blah 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 blah, insert famous author name in which they idolize. And I would say before I got heavy on the business side of, being my own small business, because that's what it is when you're a self-published author or indie author, your own small business. And before I had really delved into the business side, I was a pretty content writer. And then all of a sudden I tried like doing this business angle and having to market or marketing. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? I don't know if this is what I want for myself. I don't know if my writing is that great. And all of a sudden, I was starting to experience imposter syndrome.
Oh no.
Oh.
So definitely, marketing has been a challenge. But then I have, tried to change my gears as far as like how I interpret what's going on with it. Like, kind of rewire my brain as far as like that marketing aspect, so it doesn't become such a total just kill for me. But like, Denise, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. And try not to overload myself with too much, because I think that was the other thing, because I felt like I'd written so many books. I think it's like somewhere, some of those would definitely just be drawer books. I'll never, they might not ever see the light of day.
Nobody gets to see those.
Right. But I've been doing that, and then to suddenly be on the business side, it was like, okay, I got like all these years to catch up, because I've seen, some self-published authors say, you should be spending equal amount of time on writing as you do marketing. And I was like, oh, this scale is definitely imbalanced, because I was like, I got about 13 novels under my belt and about 10 minutes worth of marketing. So and I think what it was initially, it was putting all that pressure on myself, and now I've kind of like pulled back on that, learning that too much too soon can definitely do something to the writerly process. So and that's why I say I think traditional publishing, well, you know what, I think that's even changing too. Like, I think they got kind of a hybrid model going on, but where traditional publishing can kind of help with that marketing aspect, because they have their hands in different places, and they have the bandwidth and teams that are responsible for that piece. So whereas I am just one woman wearing 20 hats.
Exactly. Exactly.
No.
Last time we spoke, you said that you were hoping to have your next novel out in March or April. Is that still the goal? And if so, tell us a little bit about that one. That's your
Oh,
next newest
oh,
one.
the September project. And I just got the cover, or the first draft of the cover last week, and it looks so amazing. And it's
Oh,
just like,
that's
okay, Denise,
exciting.
you got to get that game together, up that game. And they actually sent me 3 different proposals, and it was nice. So this again is another instance of like, okay, Denise, I'm still working on doing the editing piece, and now I'm also seeing about instead of just my eyes being the only set of eyes on it, I'm also scoping out to kind of get another
Yeah.
editor involved, or someone who does edit professionally, to kind of have them look at it before I have it get beta read by some friends.
Yeah.
So I'm right now in the process of still doing that. I am still marching to the late March time frame, but then
Yeah.
I'm also giving myself permission to be like, okay, Denise, last time you got kind of manic with trying to release Montgomery's Diary, and you learned
Yeah.
some things about that. So be okay with pulling back, and maybe if you need to push the date out a little bit further forward. So right now, just because I have the tendency to procrastinate, I'm still marching to the order of trying to release the September project by late March. It's also a service, also a birthday gift to myself. But then I'm
Yeah.
also telling myself I am okay that if it needs to go into April, it will be all right, which will put it in line to when Montgomery's Diary, my first self-published novel, came out in April 2017, so 3 years ago. So um,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, hopefully it, like I said, it'll work out. But so the September project. This
Yeah.
was my attempt at writing a romance novel. I say attempt because I've had many attempts to write a romance novel. In fact, Montgomery's Diary was supposed to be a romance novel, leave your brains at home type book, and it turned into a psychological thriller.
Your
But
stories just do that sometimes. They
you
go where
know
they
what
want to
they
go.
do. They really do. And I let it happen. I definitely haven't been one of these writers that's like, no, this square peg will fit in this round hole. If the story goes somewhere, I
Yeah.
let it go where it needs to go. But if, given like a short little elevator pitch, the September project is about Kashmir Watson.
That's somebody's name. I love it.
Oh, thank you, thank you. But she gets blackmailed by her quote unquote best friend into participating in this faux reality show. And what it
Okay.
is, this faux reality show is trying to fit the bill for like casting like certain people. And they were going to have a plus size girl on the show,
Mm-hmm.
like trying to be the first ever like reality show that's going to have this plus size girl. But the person they had pulled out at the last minute, and her best friend who's doing the show running, and this is their first project where they're like at the helm of it's like, okay, I really need to fill this real quick. And so they try to rope in Kashmir, and she's not having it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, instead of getting their curvy girl, they get their next vixen for the show.
Okay.
um so yeah, I mean that's what it is, and I'll improve on that elevator pitch by the time it gets released.
Oh, for sure. That sounds fun, though. That sounds. And this podcast is set to come out on March 19th. So if that late March date stays, it should be pretty shortly after. And if not, it
Okay,
shouldn't be.
and that
Hopefully,
gives me
too much
extra
longer.
motivation to make sure
Yeah.
I march to those orders.
Yes. There you go. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you were able to come on and talk a little bit about your new project and your journey as a writer. And it is time for us to jump into our story.
Woohoo!
As a reminder, our plot is a chronicle of the life of a film director who was reviled for her mysterious invitation. And usually I hold off on the title, but I actually want to share it right now because it plus I haven't shared this before. I also generate, just in case we need a little extra fodder for our stories, I also include a random genre for this as well. And the genre plus the title plus the plot to me is definitely like calling out whole story. So the title of this, or the genre of this, is sci-fi horror, if we choose to go that
Sci-fi
route.
horror.
And the title is The Marquith Experience,
Oh,
which is a really fascinating title. So yeah, so with this definitely gives like an atmosphere. And I'm curious to unpack it. And we can obviously disregard the genre at any point. The title does have to stay, but the genre can be disregarded if we end up going in a not sci-fi horror route. But yeah, the
actually,
life
and
of a
I was
film
gonna say my
director.
head can be wired to go that way sometimes.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, film director reviled for her mysterious invitation, which I guess the immediate question
Oh,
is it when she sent out or when she received? I'm assuming when she sent that
yes.
Well,
people reviled her for.
right. And the fact that it said, so when you said the Marcus experience, I immediately thought of like Marcus theaters. And I was like, oh, what if she's like part of like some sort of legacy from that family? Like,
Mm.
and she she didn't go into the exact theater business, but she, became a film director, which is like kind of similar. Do you guys have Marcus theaters?
Not out here. We do in Illinois, where I'm from, but not out in
Oh,
California,
hey,
where I live now.
Midwest. Whoop,
Yeah, Midwesterner.
but no, so
but yeah, so it's a theater chain, a movie theater chain.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So for any listeners that's not familiar yet, it is a theater chain, and here it had replaced Wamberg, but going down that rabbit hole. But no, I was thinking like, what if like this film director was like some kind of a heiress to that? If we play off the
Yeah.
fact that it's that, and trying to, I guess, distinguish herself from the family, that even though she ends up being like film director, she's still like trying to be like have some sort of niche. So maybe it's also important to like maybe like what kind of film director was she? Did she have like special films that she like did? Like did she do like film noir type things, or
Well,
was
see,
she
so what
very
I'm thinking
controversial?
is maybe she did sci-fi horror films
Okay.
Yeah,
instead of our
Okay.
maybe.
story being her genre. What if that's her genre?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
what if, like, to, like, take it to another level, like, something about her invitations were somehow, like, if you got an invitation from her, you, like, without realizing you were being filmed, like, you were part of the movie, that part of her.
Oh.
Yeah, part of her
Yeah.
niche was, like, she wanted to get real reactions from people, so she would,
Yes.
set up, like, different things, and so if you got one of these invitations, it was, like, for a film she was making, you didn't really know the premise or what was going on. I had another
Oh,
idea, but it, like,
Okay.
lost.
okay, okay. Ooh, okay. So like what if she's doing this thing and one of her little impromptu film experiments gets somebody killed or injured?
Oh, and it
Yeah.
becomes, like, the missing film, like,
And
the
that's why
missing,
she was
like.
reviled.
Right. Like, yeah, so she's doing this like new the Marcus experience is this new immersive way of filmmaking, which gets really uncomfortable when your genre is sci-fi horror because it's
Yes.
Right.
not just it's not just like
Like you're not asking for this and suddenly you're getting abducted by aliens for
exactly.
film.
You know what?
Oh,
And I just thought of something. And her tagline is, "You hear the 3D and 4D. Here's 5D."
Yeah.
yeah. And she has to get like more and more like okay, so actually here's the question.
Okay.
Do people after the first, the first time they send out the invitations, the movie happens, it's released, the gimmick is known now. Does she have to do people now getting the invitations know kind of what do they know that they're going to be part of this? Is it something that she finds new ways to hide it and so that people still never know that they're being part of a movie or they know that they're part of it but they don't know what's coming? How much do they know after the first gimmick is revealed?
I think it might be like they know they're going to be part of it, but they don't know what that entails necessarily. Like they think they know, but then they switch it up, like how they switch up seasons of competition shows where they're like, last time we did it this way. And there's going to be this whole group of people who want to be involved. And so they're always looking for the next invitation. Like, where is it hidden this time? Like maybe there's clues or.
Right. And so that's what I was going to say where the film could tie in. So let's say maybe one of the things she does to throw people off is she has to create aliases, and there are invitations that go out to like different people, but those aren't the actual thing. So you never know if you're getting the real invitation or one of the little copycat ones.
Like the placebo group, the control group.
I like it.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so yeah, so this is a chronicle of her life. And so is this like a rise and fall kind of thing? Is it like this goes really well and everybody loves it and then suddenly something really bad happens and it's like a downward plunge from there?
Well, okay. Well, first off, we know since it's a chronicle of her life, her relationship to her family and the family business is obviously important. And how did she get into directing films herself, and what sparked that creativity for her? You
My
know,
my initial idea for this, which maybe can still tie in, was that she again is making these sort of experimental new the next wave of filmmaking and that she wanted to design a theater that specifically would work for this. So like those theaters where like you go where you go in and it'll like shake you around when the characters are
yeah,
like
yeah,
running or whatever, like that kind of thing,
yeah.
but maybe like way more intense.
Plants in the audience, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
maybe she gets these theaters specifically with the idea of everyone is like half film, half audience participation
right.
performance piece. And so maybe there's something of that too. Like maybe that's a piece of her story. Maybe that's how she starts, or maybe that's where she goes after people stop accepting her invitation. She just opens a regular theater and then people come in and then are horrified.
Or you know what? Or maybe so one of the things I was thinking about is going to your point earlier about like how does she like do this after the one that everyone knows the gimmick, that at some point she just goes off the radar and goes quiet. And
Yeah.
what I was
Mm.
thinking is like maybe it hits a point in her career that she's like, you know what, this is going to be my last one, and it's become a art imitating life, imitating art type
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
situation where the
Yeah.
film is still within that sci-fi realm, but she's also sort of giving out these invitations. And what people don't realize is kind of supposed to parody the last bit of her life. It's like she's
Oh
gone in with
man.
that objective, but the players, the people who are getting these invitations that will ultimately be a part of this experience, don't realize that part of what's being filmed is supposed to kind of replicate whatever she believes her last moments of life are going to be. So that's
okay.
So like she makes her death and her final days
I
her
am
last
so
film.
glad you brought that up, because this ties in totally with the idea I was getting, which is, so going back to the idea for what she started being reviled for, were like people's lives were getting disturbed and possibly even damaged or ended, right? What if it all turns back on her, and then it does turn into a sci-fi horror for us, like where somebody's revenge horror, where they come back and they're like, you ruined my life and now I'm insane and so I'm gonna haunt you. And so like whatever she planned for her audience for her final thing goes horribly, horribly wrong because of this person that she wronged
Ooh.
years before, right?
Okay, or you play with it, you leave it a little ambiguous. So like she
Oh, it's
dies
like, did she
like
intend that, or was that
2/3 of the way through
oh
the film, through this
yeah,
story, and then the remaining third is weird things happening, and people at first are like assuming that she coordinated all this, that this is another one of her stunts, and then people are less sure and less sure, and then we can even end on a note where like nobody really knows whether this was her or whether she was like was she getting her ideas from real things that she was seeing that were happening or
or was somebody else taking what she took and like
was somebody else taking it? Yeah, trying to figure out, was this her
Oh,
gimmick doing it? Like that could be really
wow.
fun if she dies partway through and then it continues
Of
on.
like Inception, and like at the end when the
yes.
and you
Yeah.
don't know. I was like, oh my god, yes, this needs to be an ambiguous ending.
Like even to the point where you wonder if the
Oh.
whole time up until that point, the person you thought was Ms. Marcus, the film director, was somebody she hired.
Well, and you know what?
Yeah, wondering if she was even
Right.
who she said she
Exactly.
was.
One of the things I was thinking about, like when we were saying, like, how is she doing this? And I was like, what if she had an assistant that was helping her for years? And part of the tragedy that happens is this assistant is the one that, somehow like in the years of helping her and sending out invitations, she becomes involved in one of the projects, but then it goes horribly wrong.
Right.
And then
Like
that's where that like
Yeah.
maybe the assistant to the family or someone who knows what happened in that revenge plot kind of can potentially come along, because for the most part like her filming has been like hands off, but then for this one specific one she lets the assistant gets involved, and the assistant has helped her over the years, but then
right.
some accident
Oh
occurs.
man.
Ah. Okay, this could be so intriguing and so
I know,
dark.
I'm almost like, I think I want to write this kind of goes along
Do
with this
it, do
horror
it,
thing that
Right?
I
write
had
it.
idea for
Oh.
years ago.
Oh man, this is fascinating. And it's the kind of thing where you could do like you could have lots of like little vignettes
Right.
along the way
Right.
up until it gets to that point where like she dies and you're like, okay, what happens now?
Yeah, and
Yeah, and like all the different things that she did that were gimmicky, and all the different things she tried and how they were received or not. And you could have like, yeah, this dark section that almost destroyed her, but then she came back and then she dies, and the last third of it is still just like that. Now where does this story go?
ooh.
And it goes weird.
Wow. Okay. So 5 years from now we'll have a movie, right? Somebody please make this into a movie.
Somebody's gonna
Yes.
write this, and then someone's gonna film it, and then it
Yes.
really will be art
Yes.
imitating life.
And then Denise will get an
And
Oscar
then
for
and then
screenwriting.
and then hire people in your movie theater to come in and and do exactly what she
Ah!
did.
Because movie theaters are all gonna be like
Oh my
that, like 5, 10 years down the road, they're gonna all
Yeah.
upgrade to like being 4D experiences.
I think there's possibilities for them to do stuff like that. Oh gosh, I think where we are now is a good place to pass it off to we're at the
Oh,
point where we're saying, okay,
right,
somebody
yeah.
write
So
this.
our audience, listeners, we have this is okay. Do something with this.
There is so much potential here. And then you know what? We didn't even go down like too much down her family past, because there might be something there,
Yeah,
and
some
like
Yeah,
background there.
right, there might be something there too that's worth exploring, especially like if this is her life's work, and me going back to my like she's somehow imitating her life as with each one of
Like
these projects.
right. So there are a lot of details here that that could only come out in the finished product, really, because
yeah, I think we're gonna have to turn this over to them. So, listeners, you hear us? We desperately
somebody
want
pass
this.
this episode to Christopher Nolan or
So,
somebody. And
yeah, like, or write it yourself and be the
yes,
next
yes.
Christopher Nolan.
Oh yeah,
Oh man.
Oh
do a
gosh.
screenplay. Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Well, let's close out the plotting section. But before we begin the whole thing, we're gonna do as we always do and share out a story that we think our listeners should check out. I decided mine as we were talking because the story that this kept bringing to mind was a movie called Synecdoche, New York,
Oh.
which is a very weird movie by Charlie Kaufman, best known for like being John Malkovich in Adaptation. He writes really unusual movies. But Synecdoche, New York is the story of a director who, I think it's a stage play he's making, but it ends up he has this big grand vision for it to be. He sets the like he buys a warehouse and puts up like replicas of the city essentially, and like hires people to be doing just like improvising just actual jobs. And by the end of this, like it keeps getting bigger and bigger to the point where he has essentially just built another city where people just actually live. And it's a very weird movie and a very strange movie, and it just kept reminding me of this, of like these sort of avant-garde artistic endeavors that get maybe way out of hand. I think it's fascinating. I think it's a very poignant and a very sad and a very really really interesting movie. So I highly recommend Synecdoche, New York. I'm going to pass it over to Jenny. What do you want the listeners to check out?
All right, as a companion suggestion to mine from the last episode, one of the more recent shows coming out, we're in the middle of season 3 of The Resident. And if you're into medical dramas and you're looking for a new one to watch, this one also has the qualities that I enjoy of strong character development and the plots that where it's not just like revolving around the medicine, but it's not just revolving around the characters either. And it delves a lot into the administration of the hospital and with the politics of, say, like promoting new drugs and that kind of thing. So that's my companion recommendation. If you're into medical dramas, check out The Resident. You'll enjoy it.
Denise, what would you like to share with our listeners today?
So I guess I'm gonna go slightly off rail. Like
Yes,
so
do it.
well, I was gonna say one of the movies that I recently watched and really liked, and I think it because it kind of hits like a sort of um mental health aspect, but it's very it's one of those things where if you're not paying attention to it, it's kind of there. But I watched The Farewell recently, which is
Mm.
supposed to be based on true events, or I should say, is based on an actual lie, and it depicts this story of this. I want to say they are. Chinese, I can't exactly remember, but in the story, the grandmother is found to have cancer and the family hides it from her throughout the
Ooh.
entire movie. They don't tell her that she has cancer, but then they're all sort of reveling from this fact and trying to keep it from her. And then her granddaughter, who was pretty much raised in America but did spend some time with her before they moved, is having trouble keeping it secret and just how is this possible that you guys can do this? In America, you couldn't do that, and this, that, and the other. And it was such a interesting story because one of the things I've always said is that, the mind is a powerful tool, weapon, or, whatever however you figure it, powerful muscle. And there is something to be said with, thoughts or things as far as whatever you put credence into and, your belief system. So it was, for me, from a mental perspective, I liked it, but then also that challenge of, as that character really wanted to say something, but then, to do so would, be defying the family and going
Yeah.
against it for, basically what everyone else has agreed upon that this is going to be doing, and which apparently is something very common that happens. Not here,
Yeah.
but that's something that's done like whenever there is some kind of like medical huge illness going on that family members might keep it from their loved one. I'm pretty sure it was China, but
I just looked up. It looks like, yeah, it's in China.
okay. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen it yet, but this has been on my list. I have a lot of people who are saying that it's like their favorites of the year.
I will say, I think I teared up maybe a couple times watching it.
Yeah. Get some dust in your eye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
awesome.
My eyes were sweating. That's what it was.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that recommendation. And Denise, before we go ahead and let listeners know any social media, any websites, where can they find you if they want to look up your books and learn more about you?
Oh, yeah. So check me out on my website, www.denisemarquithjones.com. My Twitter handle is @JonesMarquith. Let's see. And I do have a Instagram. I think it's Denise Marquith Jones as well. Or on Facebook, because everyone has a Facebook, I think, at least before it goes away. But yeah, I'm definitely on there. And so I have 2 books out right now. So if anyone's interested, Montgomery's Diary, my psychological thriller, and Ned Finally Died, my adult children's book.
Cool. And we will put all those links in the podcast description, in the episode description, so that anybody can go and look those up. Thank you so much for coming back to join us again, Denise.
Thank you. And
we're so happy it worked.
Next time.
Absolutely. The next time, hopefully it will not be because we had to re-record.
Yes.
Hopefully it'll be the next time you come on will not still be your first time on the podcast for our listeners.
Right. Yes. No.
Awesome. Well, that is our episode. As a reminder, you can find us every other Thursday wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow us on Twitter @WriteThisPod. And if you've been inspired by this episode and have questions or comments or a story or a script or anything else, email us at somebodywritethis@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
We will be back with another episode in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.
And as they say, it is a hard job to make old monkeys pull faces.